Hello, and welcome to the Artificial Podcast, with your host Nick Myers.
Artificial
Intelligence, voice recognition,
machine learning,
robotics,
actionable analytics.
It is Nick's goal to help everyone understand how AI and voice technology are reshaping our lives both personally and within organizations. Your glimpse into the growing world of AI and VoiceFirst starts now.
Nick Myers,
Nick Myers. Nick Myers.
Nick Myers.
Welcome to the Artificial Podcast. My name is Nick Myers, and I am here to help break down topics in artificial intelligence and VoiceFirst to show everyone how these technologies are going to impact our lives both personally and within organizations. The Artificial Podcast is brought to you by Red Fox AI, helping give brands a voice to the power of AI and voice assistant technology. Hey there, artificial podcasters. Welcome back to another week and another episode of the Artificial Podcast. My name is Nick Myers, and this week I am excited to bring you Daniel Hill. Daniel, if you're in the voice space, I'm sure you've seen him definitely on Instagram and some of the other places where he's been able to grow quite a presence for himself. And Daniel and I connected a couple of months ago on Instagram, actually, and just got to talking and found out that he's doing some really interesting things when it comes to the flash briefing he runs and really looking more at the social media side of voice, which I think is really interesting. But before Daniel and I get to chatting, let me tell you a bit about Daniel Hill here. So Daniel currently works at Columbia University Medical Center and runs Daniel Hill Media, where he teaches small business owners how to use Amazon Alexa and Instagram. Daniel is obsessed with figuring out what grabs people's attention and holds it. He hosts an Instagram podcast called The Instagram Stories and launched the first Instagram Amazon Alexa flash briefing where he gives daily news updates and answers questions. Daniel, welcome to the Artificial Podcast. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that excellent introduction.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, like I said, I've been looking forward to recording an episode with you just because definitely on the social media end of things, you've been doing some really interesting stuff. And I know, of course, we connected when I was in Thailand, and I know you were about to go out there a couple weeks after, and we just got to talking about the country and some different things to expect. And I'm assuming from what it looked like, because I, of course, followed you on Instagram, that you had an amazing time in Thailand.
We did. There's so much to see there. I would say that it's a lot to take in, but yes, we did have a really relaxing, quite varied trip between the cities that we went to. If you haven't been, definitely worth the trip over there.
Yeah, I would agree completely. And even, I think I told you I was just in Bangkok, but boy, I was just blown away just from, it's such a different culture compared to, I think, what we're so used to here in the U.S. And don't even get me started on the food. The food was just incredible, which I'm sure you would probably agree with, right?
Yeah, I was definitely a little bit tired of Thai food by the end. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, but we were there for, nearly 2 weeks. And, I was happy to get back to some American food too.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Well, I think to kick things off here, I personally would really like to learn more about, how did finding a niche with Instagram lead you to get started working with voice assistant tech like Alexa?
So I had a podcast. I actually started a podcast in 2015, I think it was. And I just interviewed my friends. And then from there, I kind of interviewed authors that I liked. I sort of developed this thing where I would read authors who weren't just coming out with books, but maybe had a book like a year ago. Mm-hmm. And then I would hit them up and say, hey, would you like to come on my podcast? And they wouldn't necessarily say no, because in between books, there's not a lot going on. Like maybe they're writing a new book, maybe they're not, but they're not on a book tour or promoting it. So they have a little bit more time. So that was a really kind of fun thing for me. But I realized that when I just called it the Daniel Hill Podcast, like I named it after my website. And I noticed that that's not a thing that people were searching for. And I really learned from this experience, because when people would ask me, what's the name of your podcast? What's it about? And I would be like, well, I named it after myself. I realized like it wasn't resonating. I couldn't clearly explain what my podcast was about. And it was definitely not a thing that anybody was searching for. Like nobody was searching for, does this guy have like, no. Mm-hmm. So I thought if I ever revisit this, I want to do it in a way that it's something that people are searching for, because then I think I could shortcut a lot of this like marketing efforts and like getting more downloads and more people to listen. Yeah. So I started a podcast and I called it the Instagram Stories. And it was good. I got, quite a few downloads and I interviewed people who I thought were experts, but it took me a lot of time to edit the podcast. And I'll say that, not great quality podcast. I'm not like, very professional when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
USB mic, let's do it. Let's record it. I'll edit it later. But I noticed that I'm the kind of person where for me, it's easier to get up and go to the gym every single day than it is to go 3 times a week. Like I'm just that kind of person. If I do something every single day, like it's going to happen. And so for me, this sort of podcasting easily got put to the side by other tasks and goals and projects and things that I was working on. And so it was really hard to be consistent. And so I had a friend, Jen Lehner, and Jen is huge into the Amazon world. She really got me started. And she said, Daniel, if you have a podcast, you should start a flash briefing. And I was like, I don't really know what it's about. And so I asked some of my friends, like, hey, do any of you guys have these devices? And it was like, yeah, I have it. I don't really use it. I don't know what that is, the flash briefings. And I thought, okay. And so I sort of put it on the back burner. And one day I was thinking about it. I was looking around the Amazon skills store and I was noticing that there was nothing about Instagram. And I sort of had this moment like, I know that a lot of people who are authorities on Instagram are making YouTube channels and they're all over Instagram. It's really hard for me to stand out because how am I going to be different? Like everyone's already doing that. They're doing it better than me with more time than me and more audience. How could I possibly make a dent in that? And so I thought, what if I did it in a completely different way that nobody else has done yet? Like, what if I was the person that people used to get information about Instagram on these devices? Like, that's a crazy idea. How can I make that happen?
Yeah.
So I, since I already had my podcast, the Instagram stories, I said, okay, let me call it the same thing on Amazon. And so I submitted that through the developer portal, and Amazon told me no. They said that word is trademarked. And I said, well, who cares? Like, Apple let me use it. Google let me use it. Like, why are you giving me a hard time? And they said, no, it's trademarked.
Wow.
Okay. Well, can you call me? Like, can we talk through it? And they were like, no, Amazon, they don't talk. So,
right.
So I was kind of back to the drawing board and I was asking, some of my friends, what do you think I should do? And my dad was like, well, why don't you ask Instagram? And I'm like, I'm not a person that Instagram is going to listen to. That's not, I can't like pick up the phone and get Zuckerberg and be like, hey, can you help me out? Like, I want to do this thing. So I actually thought about it and I came across a website where if you're having a commercial for your brand, say you're like a big clothing company like Express or Macy's or something, and you want to include Instagram in your advertisement, like you want to have the Instagram logo at the bottom or something, you can submit this through this website and Instagram's marketing team will approve it.
Really?
And I thought, yeah. And I thought, what if I did that? And so I wrote all, explained what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And Instagram wrote back and they were like, no. And so I thought, okay. I said,
no.
The problem is I didn't explain this right. That's really what I'm missing. So I did it again and I said, here's what I want to do. What would you have to do what would I have to say or do in order for this to be approved? And Instagram wrote back, okay, give us more information. And I was like, oh, it's on. So I wrote a little bit more and I explained a little bit more and I gave a sample of what I thought it should sound like or be like. And then I like held my breath and a few days went by and Instagram came back to me and they said, okay, our legal team approves it if you do it with this verbiage at the bottom. And then you can use our logo and you can use our branding and everything else. And
that's fascinating.
Like, oh my goodness. And it was such a funny moment because I thought, is it going to be like a week before somebody steals this idea? Like,
yeah.
It was hard, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. And so then I sent everything back to Amazon and it took them weeks to approve it because maybe nobody ever did this before. I don't know.
Wow.
And so that's how I launched. And it's been really interesting because when people search for information on Instagram, they find me. They often don't know what flash briefings are because I know from the amount of people who have enabled my skill versus the amount of daily listeners that I have every day, there's a huge disparity. So that says to me that people are enabling, but they don't know what it is or how to access it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they will one day. That's okay. But I've learned a ton from this experience. And so being able to ride the wave of a major brand name has been huge for me. That's really what got me into this. And then from there, I was like, well, other people are doing this and how can I learn from them? So I started finding Facebook groups of people who are doing flash briefings. And then I went to
Hmm.
Project Voice last year in 2019. And I just only started my flash briefing like 2 months before that.
Yeah.
And I found Project Voice and I couldn't afford the ticket for entrance. So I asked Bradley, like, can I work at the event? Like, I'll volunteer. I'll do whatever you want. I don't care. Just can I go? And he said yes. And that was a huge thing for me because now I was able to meet people in the industry and kind of talk and find out what's going on. And then this year I spoke at Project Voice about some of the
Yep.
challenges around marketing and discoverability with skills and some of the other things that I've learned from you and a lot of other people. So it's been a ride, but that's really how I got started. I made a ton of mistakes and I'm still making mistakes, and it's still so new that it's okay to make those mistakes. But that's how I got so involved in this world.
Yeah, no, good for you. That's a really interesting story. I never would have thought that you had to go through that much hubbub, if you will, just to be able to claim Instagram as a name, or at least use the name Instagram on an Alexa skill. Well, I guess in your case, the flash briefing. That's really fascinating. So all it is a form. You just go and fill out a form to get rights to use it or use the logo on something. Is that what you're pretty much explaining?
I mean, you have to be a brand, a big brand with a good use
Gotcha.
case for
Okay.
it. You can't just. I
Yeah.
mean, they told me no right off the bat. You have to really. It's designed for large marketing budgets
Yeah.
and companies that are working on much bigger projects than me. That's what it's ultimately designed for.
Gotcha. That's really interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing. Well, that's definitely good not
Since
only for me to know, but if you're a listener and you ever run into that issue, well, Dana just told you how to do it and how to get in touch with Instagram to do so. That's really fascinating. So what
I
has it
think all the.
oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was going to say I think all the time about doing this for other companies and brands, but I just don't have the bandwidth. Like,
Yeah.
that you could do the same thing for Facebook, right? Like you could do the
Yep.
same thing for Pinterest or Snapchat or Etsy or TikTok or whatever you're like super interested in. I just don't know enough about those platforms to talk about them every single day. Like that is a key component of it, but do it, like I'll help you. If you listen to this podcast and you pick one of those brands, I will 100% help you with everything I know to do the exact same thing.
Wow. That's super cool. So what has it been like producing your flash briefing and forgive me, do you do it daily or weekly or how often do you publish that?
So I do it 5 times a week.
5 times a week. Okay.
Occasionally I get messed up. I get sick or I just get home from work late or whatever,
Yeah.
and I can't do it. But for the most part, I do it 5 times a week. It's actually really good because, like I said, I'm a consistent person, and so it's taught me a lot about my own consistency. At the beginning I was like, is there going to be enough Instagram stuff to talk about? Like, am I going to
Yeah.
burn out from doing this? And surprisingly, there's always something new or different or unique to talk about, whether it's strategy or new features that are in beta testing or debating certain ways of using the platform for growth. Like there's 100 things to talk about. And sometimes I think I've said everything I have to say, and people will send me messages like, Daniel, I love listening to you every day. Like I listen to you while I make my breakfast, or I listen to you while I make lunch with my kids. And that makes me feel so good. Like, thank you that you think my opinions are, worthy, but also I'm just a guy with a microphone. Like I'm not even, a person with 10,000 followers or 100,000 followers,
Yeah.
so that kind of has put it in perspective for me too.
Cool. So what have you found the benefits then by doing a flash briefing? Maybe you just kind of dove into those, but are there any other benefits that you found to producing a daily flash briefing in the manner that you have been?
So I would say in terms of building an audience, I think that if you are on Instagram for a certain level of Instagram, you need to be, I'm just going to be real here, but I think you need to be attractive. I think you need to present well, whether you
Yeah.
have professional photos or you have professional videos or you have the skills to do those things. I think that's a really key component. My wife is a photographer on the side, but I can't ask her to take pictures of me every day or like, kind of as much as I would want. But this is I do much better in a talking environment than a picture taking environment because I'm not a photographer, right? Like
Hmm.
I can edit some video, but I'm not a videographer. But talking and teaching and explaining things and giving strategy, that I could
Yeah,
do
that's your jam.
all day. So that's been a perfect fit for my personality, my energy level. I do my flash briefing in about 15 to 20 minutes per day. And that's based on my busy schedule, like pretty much all I can do. I have another colleague in this space. His name's Adrian Simple. If you haven't met him, his flash briefing is called The Gaming Observer, and it's amazing. And Adrian spends between typically 90 minutes to 2 hours a day on his flash briefing, and it shows 100%. It shows. I don't have as much bandwidth for that, but in the time that I do have, I do feel like I am able to make something and have an impact and give people value in a short amount of time, that's what it's all about, right? That micro content. And so I do feel like I've had success in this. Ultimately, my goal always has been to get speaking engagements. I always wanted to speak about something technology related. And I picked Instagram because I thought that's a thing that's confusing that people will want to know about. And over time, it's sort of evolved where now I'm able to get speaking opportunities based on Instagram, but even based on this Amazon flash briefing platform, because nobody knows about it. Like podcasters are very new to this whole environment. And it's a thing that it's pretty hard to wrap your mind around. It's disposable content, just like on Instagram stories. It's only up for 24 hours until the next episode's up. So what does that mean? With Instagram stories, somebody can respond with a DM. This one, they don't really have a mechanism to reply to you to tell you if they liked it or not. So how does that affect what you do? And so this has been really cool for me to kind of really start to dig in and get some cool speaking opportunities based off of this work.
No, that's awesome. And I would completely agree with you on the speaking front, because I feel like the moment I started transitioning into speaking specifically about AI and voice, it just, nobody else is doing it. So I found a real niche in it, and I agree with you completely. People are just eating it up right now. So I'm happy that you were able to kind of find that intersection then between Instagram, the flash briefing side, because nobody else is talking about that either. So that's really cool. I'm happy for you. So how do you think your flash briefing has helped you expand your Instagram or social media marketing business? Because I know you talked about Danny Hill Media and some of the work you do there. So how do you think the flash briefing has helped you expand that?
So I will say that over the past few months, I haven't been able to really do much in terms of having a social media business.
Gotcha.
I've just focused on my 9 to 5 and on the side trying to get speaking opportunities. So for that, it's been a perfect fit. In terms of building up customers or getting more clients, I do think that it is possible because you do present yourself as an authority in this. What I've focused on more is building a community. And so for the people who are most engaged with my flash briefing, I've started a Facebook group. And I say that address probably once a week or so. And I post all the stories there that I talk about, the news articles and stuff. People can comment or ask questions, give feedback there. And so that's one of the things that I would say is really valuable, is to get that community built on whatever mechanism makes sense for you. I think about all the time, should I send out a weekly email with all the links and what I think? That's probably going to be my next step, in the next few months. But I want to give people the opportunity to reach me and to feel like they're part of the flash briefing too. One of the things I've really worked hard on when I'm on vacation, and even when I'm not, is to give anybody who listens to the show a chance to make an episode. Send me 3 minutes of yourself talking about Instagram, a feature, how you got started, what you like, a blog post you read that you think really resonates with people. Whatever it is, it's my platform and it's your platform. It's I don't think of it like, oh, I'm the one who owns it. If you have something to say, you want to take over the show for a day, a week, a month, cool, that's fine with me. And some people have told me like, you know what, I didn't like this person as much, or I didn't like that. And other people said, I listened to, I had one guy, Robert Boyle, and people told me I listened to Robert Boyle's show. And as soon as I heard him on yours, I was like, wow, they know each other, they're friends. And that's to me super cool is I'm trying to make friends with every other person who creates content for this Amazon service. And I want you to know that I'm friends with them. And they're going to guest host, and maybe if I can guest host theirs, but it's all kind of a community thing, and we're all working together on this. So it's not like I'm the only one who, I don't think that way.
I really like that you invite people to give you content that you publish on your flash briefing, because, I have quite a few, of course, that I listen to as well, and I don't think I've come across a whole lot that do that. So, and forgive me that I have yet to enable yours and take a listen to it. I know through some other people I know when I've been with them, they had yours enabled and I listened to an episode or two, but I haven't specifically listened to one where you had other content. So now I'm going to have to make a point of it to go and seek that out, because I think that's really cool and fascinating that you do that, because talk about a way to engage your audience and continue to develop that community like you mentioned. And then maybe it'll even push somebody else once they realize, oh, I really like this short form brief casting, short form audio content. Maybe I'll start my own. And then you can empower and inspire people to do that. I think that's really cool. So Yeah,
Sure.
that's all I have to say on that. I really like that you do that. So what are some tips or tactics or strategies that you have for someone looking to start a flash briefing of their own?
That is a great question. I would say first to pick a topic, and I thought sort of when I went into this that you should niche down as much as possible, but I've sort of changed my mindset on that. And of course, it depends on your goal, right? Like if your goal is to get more speaking opportunities or more clients or whatever, then you need to take that into context. But if your goal is to grow an audience, go as wide as possible and pick something that a lot of people are searching for information on. I would even recommend going on Amazon.com and looking at products that people are buying, things that people are searching for on Amazon, because they use it to get information. Like we read reviews, not like Google, almost like Google, but just a little different. And so look for a thing that people are buying or expressing interest in and see if there's a way that you can provide information about that thing to as many people as possible. That's how to start. Then figure out how you can get more information about that thing that you can share every single day. So for me, I use Google Alerts. I set up a Google Alert for Instagram and I set it up as an RSS feed so I can kind of track it throughout the day. I click articles I think are interesting and keep them up in my browser and then review them at night and pick one. But you could do the same thing. Like if you were really interested in, I don't know, lifting weights or working out or whatever, like keep an eye out on all the articles for bodybuilders you like or whatever and blog posts that you think are important and share those with an audience. So it doesn't have to be you necessarily creating brand new content from scratch. Here's a blog post that I wrote today. Here's a blog post that I wrote today. Take other people's content and riff off of it. Give your take on why you think it's right, wrong, what you learned from it, what you think is accurate. All those things are going to be beneficial to an audience. The audience is getting like a micro course from you, a college course in 3 minutes a day, right? What can they learn about that topic from you? And so now you become really a trusted advisor in that space.
No, I think those are some excellent ways to get started and some excellent tactics and strategies to deploy because I think, again, this is another facet of voice that there's so much room to experiment with, and it really doesn't take that much at all to get a flash briefing started. And I think just because of the nature of the biteable pieces of content, that's why I think this is so valuable. And it's, again, really interesting to talk with people like yourself who really kind of found their own voice and niche in this facet or niche itself of voice and have really made it their own. That's very cool. I really appreciate some of those items you were able to share. So I know also at Project Voice, you were a part of the Skill Setters meeting with Emily Bender, where you talked about some different tactics or some different ways to go about marketing Alexa skills and Google Actions and some different things. So maybe changing gears just a bit here for a moment, what are some of the best tactics that you think developers or really anybody who builds an Alexa skill or Google Action can deploy to advertise their voice app?
Yeah, I think this is a really challenging one. There's no clear answer. I would say that it really comes down to the developers sort of putting on their marketing hats and either think as a marketer, or if you're very focused on your development, which you probably are, maybe work with somebody else on this. I gave a talk called Marketing and Discoverability for Amazon Skills. What is the exact title? I think it was like Challenges for Marketing and Discoverability for something like that. Anyway, trying to blank. The three main suggestions that I had were, number one, go as wide as possible. And I spent a lot of time talking with some of the people over at Volley FM who do Everyday Positivity, Flash Briefing, and also Song Quiz, which is my favorite game on the Amazon service. My wife and I have played hours of Song Quiz.
Song Quiz?
Oh,
I haven't heard of that. Is that an Alexa skill or?
Yes. So you say, open Song Quiz, and they say, tell us your name. Okay, pick a decade, and 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. And then you say, okay, pick a decade. And then she plays a 10-second snippet of a song, and you have to say the name and the artist. And it's,
oh my gosh, I got to try this.
Yeah, no, it's great. And one of the things that I really like about it is it's easy, but you can play in a group. So if we have friends over for dinner or something, like while I'm making coffee, I'll just put it on and now we're all playing this game. So I talked to Volley and I said, guys, like, what would you say has really been the thing that made this grow? Like how do people find out about this? They search, right? And they said, no, it's mostly enabled when people go to other people's houses and say, Alexa open song quiz. And so I thought a skills spread because people see them featured in the skill store and stuff like that, but that's not how it works at all. So that really taught me how people find skills is often through recommendations of their friends, actually going to their house and saying,
No
open
kidding.
this thing. Right. And so I really had this aha moment. It was super fascinating to me, but they also really stressed to me how important it is to go wide. If you think about like this song quiz being such a big skill for them, it's not niche at all. It's not,
Yeah.
they do have country skill, country music quiz and stuff like that. But song quiz is like, get everybody. Like,
Yeah,
like
it
if you're
reaches a
into,
huge audience.
right. If you're
Sure.
into 60s music or you're into 2010s music, like give it to everybody. So I think that's a key component. I think also using social media in some capacity to remind people that your skill exists.
Absolutely agreed.
That's a key component of it. And whatever your skill's about, talk about that thing, right? So, I tweet about Instagram. I post on my Instagram page, new features and things like that. I make blog posts about those things. That's what I talk about. And so I keep reminding people that this is what I'm talking about. And then I think using email marketing, I personally am not a huge fan of email marketing. I feel like I get enough email, but I use the example in my talk of VoiceBrew, my friend Catherine Prescott at VoiceBrew, who is absolutely doing a phenomenal job in this space.
Oh,
she
yeah.
has an email that goes out, if you're not familiar, once a day with just like 3 things you didn't know about the Amazon Echo service
It's
or
brilliant.
device. And she has thousands and thousands of subscribers. She's working with companies now. She's partnering with Nutella and doing all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah.
And she just keeps it super simple. And so, and I even worked with Catherine and gave her some ideas and thoughts. And she launched her own flash briefing now, which is the same content as what she sends out in the email, but just in voice format. And so I think
That's
it's kind of,
awesome.
it's hitting it from 3 angles, right? Letting people know that you exist, keep giving them that information, keep reminding them that you know a lot and you have a lot to share, and people will remember you and come back, because there is no real mechanism for reminding people. Like right now, if I pull out my phone, I have apps, I have Instagram, I have Twitter, whatever, and I see those little icons on my phone. But on these Amazon devices, there's no visual reminder at all,
Nothing.
right? And so that's one of the real big challenges. But using these kind of methods that I've mentioned, I think can really help to address that. There's no clear answer, but I think those are the best answers in 2020, kind of from where we sit right now.
Yeah, I think those are some really good ways for developers and anybody who builds a voice app to advertise and market what they do. Because I mean, of course, as you know, the quote unquote discoverability thing has been the topic of conversation for quite some time now. And I just think ultimately we're just in that stage where it's still emerging and people are still experimenting. And, like you said, there's always been a visual component to some of these different things, specifically apps, but with voice that does not exist. And you have to, remember what experience you want to invoke, the specific things you need to say to get it to happen, at least at this point in time. I'm sure that'll change in the future, but I agree with you completely. Social media is a great way to do that. I subscribe to VoiceBrew myself, and I think what Catherine does is amazing. So yeah, I think those are some really good ways to promote voice apps of any kind. So when we look at maybe voice as a technology on the whole, what is one thing, Daniel, that intrigues you most about voice assistant tech?
There's a lot.
I know, big question there.
I would say that as the wearables really start to integrate more into our lives, how much I think is going to change in that space. That's a thing that I think about a lot. I have Galaxy Buds. I tried the Amazon Echo Buds, and I ended up returning them. They didn't work.
I remember
well
you
for
saying
me.
that.
Yeah, and that was interesting because there were things that I wanted to do, like be able to talk and have the music change and the volume change, and it didn't work the way I thought it would. And when I used it on the streets of Manhattan, I looked crazy because I was saying, Alexa, Alexa, and I'm yelling and it's not hearing me, and
Yeah.
people are looking at me like, who is this guy and who is he talking to? And they're thinking he's homeless, but he's well dressed. What's and that's not where we want to be, right? So I think I'm really looking forward to that improving. When I first started using my Galaxy Buds and I turned on the full notifications for hearing texts and emails.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm walking with my phone in my pocket, my wife was upset about something and she was texting me furiously and it was reading me the whole thing as I walked. And I sort of had this moment like, this is what the future is like. Like, this is, my phone stays in my pocket and I still know what's going on. It just, put my podcast on a slightly lower volume while I listen to what my wife is caring about in this moment. And then my podcast goes back. And so I think that's going to be a thing that really grows. I think the hearables and wearables world is just going to keep growing. And all the data that we get from, smartwatches. I'm not an Apple user, but I feel like the Apple Watch, this is going to sound crazy. I think the Apple Watch really cares about people because it's saving people's lives, right? Every time I read a story
that's
about
a really good point.
The guy who fell off his bike and like hurt himself somewhere in the middle of the woods, and the Apple Watch detected the fall and called the ambulance, and it was there, and he woke up in the hospital. I will tell you right now, my smartwatch would never do, like, it doesn't care about me. And it felt like, I think so all this, data that the watch can get and where that's going to helping people make better choices, right? Like when people make food choices right now, yeah, they can look and see the calories, but like tracking calories and counting, that's a lot of work. But if, you looked down at your watch and your watch was like, hey, you should slow down, or give you some kind of, I think that's really where it's going, is to make decisions for you or give you a lot more information based on what you've done or where you're going or what you're doing. I think that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I'll openly admit I've had an Apple Watch since 2016, and every day, multiple times a day, Nick, remember you need to breathe. Nick, remember you need to stand up. So when you said, "Oh, I feel like it cares about you," I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." I mean, sometimes I'm like, Apple Watch enough. I know I need to breathe for the day, but
Right.
you're right. I mean, the ability of the technology to, I mean, the word you use, care about people now, is just amazing. With the data that it can have access to and interpret. And I think, of course, when you brought up the hearables example, I mean, that of course is a perfect example to bring up, because there's a lot of discussion now too about, what AirPods have brought to the market, what, the Echo Buds and the Pixel Buds have brought to the market as well, and how it's essentially creating another extension of voice technology away from mobile, away from having to have necessarily another device, kind of like a smart speaker or something else, which I think is going to create so much growth within the industry over the next couple of years. I do. So I'm really glad that is something that intrigues you too, because I agree 100%. So you being more of a social media person, of course, how do you envision social media and voice either overlapping or integrating with one another over the next decade, if you think it even will?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, and I don't think there's a clear answer yet, but I do think it's going to be more interactive in some way that's less reading and more vocal. Like right now, if I listen to a podcast and I have something to say about it, there's not much I can do. I can send an email to the person who made the podcast, or I can tweet them or whatever, but like it's not real feedback in the same mechanism that I received it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
eventually I could see it going where someone listens to my flash briefing or listens to my podcast, and then they can, without taking out their phone or doing anything, can say, respond to Daniel, tell him I liked this or I didn't like that or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a lot more interactive, and in a way that people can then later say, okay, not only do I want to hear what Daniel said today, but then I want to hear all the comments of what people said about what Daniel's, and
Mm-hmm.
because we do that with blog posts, right? We read the comments of blog posts, and that's normal. So I could see it being some kind of mechanism like that, whether that's social media or not, I don't know, but but I think that's definitely a key component of it.
So then with that in mind, do you ever think that social media could become a 100% voice first experience, or do you think that visual component will always need to be there in some capacity?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of times, like if I'm laying in bed and my wife is sleeping next to me, I'm going to read an article on my phone. I'm probably not going to put in my earbuds and
Yeah.
listen to that article or listen to a podcast. But when I'm walking or when I'm driving or when I'm cooking, then my earbuds are in or whatever. And then I'm listening to that audio. So I think there's always going to be times where you're going to want to read for whatever reason, but just give me the choice and give it to me in a human voice so I can make that decision, what's best for me and which I like best.
Yeah, I've been asked that question a bit before, and that's kind of why I wanted your opinion because with all the work you do with Instagram, I really wanted to see what your thoughts were. I agree with you. I don't necessarily know if there's a clear cut answer on what that integration looks like right now, and I think there'll be a time and a place for maybe a voice first only, interaction with Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And that's kind of the nature of the platform. Like you're not gonna Instagram's a visual platform, of course,
Right,
as you
100%.
know, right? So it's like
Yeah.
you're not that'd be harder to have a voice only interaction with that. But something like Twitter, where it's all pretty much text based, I could see that working really well. But the question is, how the heck is that gonna happen?
But I think there's so much though visual clues that you get from even tweets that you don't necessarily think
Yeah, that's
about.
true.
Like looking a lot of times when I'm on Twitter, I'm like, who is this person? Like, why am I following them? And then like I'll look at their icon a little more closely and like, oh, you know what? I met this person at a conference 2 years ago. You know what? And so it gives me that. But in a voice scenario, I would never get that. I wouldn't
Right.
know. Instagram, like you said, it's 100% visual. I always tell people Instagram stories are like having your own TV show. You could just flip on the
Yeah.
camera and start showing your life.
Truly.
Like, guys, here's what I'm doing. And people will watch it and people will vote on it and people will comment on it. And it's amazing for that. Like, absolutely. But there is a voice component. Like I can send you a voice DM and you can listen to it. And I can record that right through my Galaxy Buds while I'm walking around and send you a voice memo and you can listen to it whenever you're so I think there is some voice component to it, but I think that's a thing that people will use a lot more. One thing I think is really important is captions and being able to hear and see at the same time. So I think that's going to be a thing that social integrates more. So if I have my earbuds in, I can hear what you're doing as I watch your story. Or if I don't, I forgot them, I'm in a noisy environment, I can't hear whatever, I can still read along. And that's a thing I think social media will eventually connect the dots with a lot more.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. So, if you could develop a dream voice app, time for a fun question, what would it be and why?
So right now, every day I get up and I take the train, and on my way to work, I pull my way to the train, I pull out my phone and I look to see if the train is on time or late or whatever. And I've been saying for a long time, I really wish there was a way I could say, to my Echo device, where is my train? And it says, oh, your train's working, is your train's 4 minutes late. So based on how fast you walk, you should put your shoes on at 7:45, walk out the door at 7:46.
Oh, that'd be
and
awesome.
You can work at your normal pace and make the train on, that's the kind of information that I feel like we're so close, but not there yet. So in terms of dream app, that's, I guess I'm just really trying to leave at the last possible minute for work.
No, but that solves a really simple problem. It would help people all over the world. If you think about, of course, how many subway systems, how many
True.
train systems there are in the world, that would solve a huge problem. I think that would help a lot of people. So I think that's a really good dream voice app to build. And I wouldn't be shocked if something like that actually does get created within the next couple of years, personally. So as we kind of wind things down here, I always like to end on this question because I really like getting the different opinions of the guests I have on. But what is one thing that you think someone can do today to begin leveraging voice assistant tech, either personally or within their organization?
That's a great question. I would say to look at what's possible now and start figuring out how you can use it internally to help either your team or your company or whatever. I think in a lot of cases, some of these technologies, people don't realize that they exist. They don't know that you can do that until you show them, or they don't realize why that's valuable until they start to use it in their everyday lives. So I think it's not a great answer. You need to sort of just pick something and try it and start showing people how they can make their lives easier, get more information, whatever it is, through this method.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I think always starting simple with new technology and working your way up, especially going into it with a plan, knowing that there's a problem that can be solved with it, I think is the best way. So I think that's an excellent answer to that question. So, well, Daniel, it's been a great time being able to chat with you on this week's episode. And I always love talking with different people about some of the different things I'm working on, and especially with you having a background in Instagram and how that's crossed over into voice. I think it's just fascinating. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and chat with everybody, and well, chat with me, and of course, providing your expertise to the listeners, of course. So if anybody wanted to get in touch with you, what are some of the best ways for them to do so?
Instagram or Twitter. Those are probably the two best. I'm at Daniel Hill Media on both. I'd love to chat, hear what you're working on, connect. That's the best for me. So at Daniel Hill Media.
Fantastic. Well, again, Daniel, it's been fantastic having you on the show, and I know we'll be chatting soon. So take care.
Thanks, Nick.
Artificial
Intelligent voice recognition.
machine learning.
Robot.
You've been listening to the Artificial Podcast with your host Nick Myers.
Nick Myers.
To stay up to date with all our latest episodes, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. To learn more about how your organization can benefit by unlocking the power of AI and voice, visit www.redfox-ai.com. Until next time.